this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how I overcame unexplained recurrent miscarriage and diving into the exacts of the protocol that finally worked. What's up, tribe, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me again. If you are new here, then my name is Mariah and I have had a very tumultuous fertility journey. Eventually, I was diagnosed with unexplained recurrent miscarriage, and it took 5 pregnancies for me to successfully bring home my baby. I can assume that you may have clicked on this video because you yourself have experienced recurrent miscarriages, and for that, I send my deepest condolences. I know personally firsthand how rough and how difficult and how devastating that is to go through. I hope by sharing this video that I can potentially help someone else to achieve both getting pregnant and staying pregnant with their take-home baby. I am going to preface this video saying that I am not a doctor, I am not a dietitian, I am not a medical professional. I am just sharing with you the things that I personally did. I am not telling you to go out and buy any of these things specifically, use any of these things specifically, and I do also recommend that you consult your healthcare team before trying anything. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we start off with devices. I have tried a few fertility devices, but the one that worked the best for me was Ovusense. It comes in this little pouch here, and it is an internal monitoring device that takes your body temperature. This device is really great because it gives you a stress-free way to not only track your core temperature, but it also helps you to hone in on your ovulation. I normally would only take OPKs, but this was highly precise and accurate, and I can say that because at the same time I was using this, I was also getting cycle monitoring, and this lined up pretty exact with what my doctor was seeing as far as my ovulation was going. So I use Ovusense just so I could get more accurate information, hence being able to hone in on my ovulation and share that information with my fertility team. Next, we have the supplements. I started off by taking just this nature-made prenatal vitamin. As you can see, it has the DHA in it as well, and it does have folic acid in it. However, folic acid is the more synthetic version of folate, and while it can work for a number of women, it isn't always properly absorbed. Hence why I also took methyl folate. Methyl folate is the more natural form of folate. You can get folate through your diet, but it would probably take a lot for you to get this amount. So I just took one of these a day. It's 5 milligrams of folate in addition to the folic acid that is in the prenatal. Great thing about this is you are going to urinate any excess out, so you don't really have to worry about getting too much of it. It would just essentially be a waste if you took more than one of these a day. I also took 500 milligrams of vitamin C, and it's just in the chewable form. And the fish oil with the omega-3s. I took about 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of fish oil every day. It's 2 capsules once a day. You just take it with food. The same with all of these vitamins. And everything I've mentioned so far is overall just to help with your egg health. Next, I started taking vitamin D. After getting extensive testing done, I started looking into what deficiencies I might be having. So I asked my doctor to go ahead and do a panel for vitamins B and D, and it came up that I was actually pretty deficient in vitamin D. I was well below the normal range. So in addition to taking my prenatal, which clearly was not giving me enough vitamin D, I started taking even more vitamin D. So I actually took 2 of these a day. So that's 4,000 IU a day. Vitamin D is actually one that oftentimes we are deficient in, especially if we live up in the northern area. At the time, I was living up in New York, and it never dawned on me that it's like cloudy there a lot of the times in upstate New York. So I was not getting vitamin D just from going outside. Clearly wasn't getting it just by taking a prenatal, and I wasn't getting enough of it in my diet either. So by taking 2 of those capsules a day, I was able to, within a few short months, bring my vitamin D back to normal range. Next, we have a really important one, which is ubiquinol, also known as CoQ10, but ubiquinol is the more pure form of it. So if you can find CoQ10 and make sure that it's in the form of ubiquinol, that is the absolute best form. I really like this particular brand. It is the Jarrow brand. These are 100 milligrams. I took 200 milligrams of these a day when I originally started, and then I eventually bumped it up to 300 milligrams. Ubiquinol is really good for reducing inflammation as well as improving your egg quality. I also added bromelain into my regimen. If that sounds familiar, it's because bromelain is what is in the core of pineapples. I'm sure many of you have tried the pineapple core method before, and I too was running out and buying pineapples and coring them and making sure that I ate the cores at the exact proper time. But I also realized that I might not necessarily be getting enough of the bromelain by just eating a single pineapple core. Also, it's not always the season for pineapples, so they were increasingly becoming difficult to find at the times I needed it and when it was right. So I went ahead and switched to just taking the bromelain supplements. It's literally encapsulating everything you're going to get from a pineapple core into a simple capsule. And these, I just timed them with my cycle. The same time period you would eat the pineapple core is when I took them, and I only took one. They are the equivalent of 500 milligrams. I also took L-Arginine. L-Arginine was something that I was not previously familiar with. However, I did start taking it after I started my Clomid cycles because Clomid does tend to thin the lining of your uterus. So to combat that, I started taking L-Arginine to help thicken the lining of my uterus. Next, we're going to get into medications. I was placed on 50 milligrams of Clomid. Many of you know that previously I hadn't really had trouble or too much trouble getting pregnant. However, the fertility specialist went ahead and recommended Clomid to me because they felt that it would help me get the strongest, most optimally developed egg possible. So even though I had gotten extensive testing surrounding my cycle, my LH levels, all of that jazz, my egg quality, I pretty much got the works. And then that's the thing about unexplained recurrent miscarriage. They really can't figure out what's going on and why your body tends to struggle holding on to pregnancy, but they have seen success with using Clomid in order to stimulate the most optimal growth of the eggs during a cycle. So I did 50 milligrams of Clomid. I also utilized a gonadotropin trigger in the amount of 10,000 units. Again, my reproductive endocrinologist wanted to make sure that they had optimal control over also when my eggs would be releasing. So I went ahead and triggered to make sure my eggs actually released on time. And lastly, I took Mucinex. If you do not know, Clomid can really dry you out when it comes to your cervical mucus. So taking Mucinex to combat that actually worked pretty well for me. I took anywhere from 600 to 1200 milligrams, so 1 to 2 tablets of Mucinex. If you were struggling to have cervical mucus before, after taking the Mucinex, it should not be much of a struggle. Clomid can also thicken your cervical mucus, so if it's too thick, it makes it darn near impossible for the sperm to actually swim through. So by taking Mucinex, it gives you that optimum egg white cervical mucus. As far as my husband taking supplements, all he took was a daily men's complete vitamin along with these two supplements. So he took the L-Arginine, which really helps improve sperm count and increase sperm count. And he also took that with the ubiquinol. And ubiquinol can really help in the areas of sperm motility as well as morphology, aka how the sperm are shaped. Now we're gonna go ahead and dive into the protocol, which is broken up into 3 parts. 1, which specific days I took medications and or supplements on, 2, which days we baby danced, and 3, what I did after receiving a positive. So from the first day of my cycle until 1 DPO or days past ovulation, I took 1,000 milligrams of L-Arginine. Cycle days 3 through 7, I took 50 milligrams of Clomid. Cycle day 7 through 18, I took 600 to 1,200 milligrams of Mucinex. On cycle day 13, I got a high OPK. I took my gonadotropin trigger. Cycle day 14 was the day I ovulated. And then from 2 to 6 DPO, I took 500 milligrams of Bromelain. Those are the specific medications and supplements that I only took on those specific days. Anything that wasn't mentioned means that it is part of my normal everyday vitamin regimen. So we actually decided to use the sperm meets egg plan, but I modified it and started a little bit sooner. The days we baby danced on were cycle day 4, 6, 8, 10, 13, the day of the trigger, 14, the day of ovulation, 15, the day after ovulation, and cycle day 17. Throughout my entire cycle, I also used a heating pad and socks to make sure that my feet were essentially kept warm at all times. Cold feet do pull their heat from your core temperature. Essentially, it's taking away heat from your womb, literally. So for me, the best method I found was putting a heating pad at the very end of my bed and sleeping with it on every single night, and also making sure I was wearing socks at all times, whether I had shoes on or not around the house. Pretty much just told myself, just wear the thickest socks you have at all times. And pre-seed, not that I really needed it that much after taking the Mucinex, but earlier on in my cycle, I definitely wanted to make sure that any potential sperm that were going to be the one got to where they needed to go. So I did also use pre-seed. Now, after getting my positive, I immediately, the moment I confirmed my clear positive, I immediately started on progesterone suppositories. This is the particular brand that I use, the Endometrin. So it is a vaginal suppository. I took 200 milligrams a day split into the morning and the evening. So it comes with all of the vaginal applicators. Then it also comes with the individual pouches of the actual progesterone. And to keep the dosing consistent, I took it at the same exact time every single day. So I would take it at pretty much 11 a.m. and then take it again around about 10 p.m. So I pretty much just use one of the applicators, insert it the same way you insert a tampon, squeeze it in order to release the progesterone. And then all I would do is lay down for about 15 minutes. The reason I didn't jump up immediately is because the progesterone takes time to actually kind of like melt. And I didn't want it to start just leaking out, which, you know, it will leak out, and it does leak out during the day and throughout the day. So it is best to wear a panty liner. But for about the first 15 minutes, I always laid down just to give it time to absorb. Other things I continued after my positive were, 1, always keeping my feet warm. I did this throughout my entire first trimester. Now, once I was 10 weeks, I went to a maternal fetal medicine appointment, and my doctor assured me that it was okay to stop the progesterone. I told her, just from the fear of my previous experiences, that I actually preferred to taper off of it. If the progesterone was deemed harmless anyway, I didn't necessarily want to just stop cold turkey and have my body react to that negatively. So starting at about 11 weeks, I went down to 1 suppository a day or 100 milligrams of progesterone a day. And I did this for about a week. Then after that week passed, I literally spaced out the timing of each dosage over the course of about, I would say, like 2 days. So it wasn't until I was fully fully through my first trimester that I actually fully stopped the progesterone. Once again, my MFM reassured me that it would be fine to stop cold turkey, but per my preference, she also agreed that it was perfectly fine for me to simply taper off. What I also continued to take and do after I got my positive, obviously my prenatal vitamin, I continued with that. I continued with the folate, the fish oil, and the ubiquinol. The ubiquinol, I reduced the amount. I went from taking 300 milligrams of ubiquinol to only 100 milligrams, sometimes 2 depending on how I was feeling, and I would do that every other day. So it wasn't every single day ubiquinol. It was every other day, be it 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams. I felt that it would help reduce the inflammation, which would potentially lower the chances of having another miscarriage. So I took that. I also informed my doctors of exactly what I was taking, and they were perfectly fine with me taking that as well. Along with that, I took my vitamin D, vitamin C. They also tried to give me vitamin B to help with the nausea from the progesterone, because progesterone really does take it out of you. Your body already produces it, but then when you take it on top of that, it amplifies all of the symptoms. So I had a lot of nausea. I really couldn't keep food down, so they tried to give me vitamin B, and eventually they switched to giving me Zofran, which did help mildly, but I still wasn't able to keep a whole lot of food down for about the first 5 months of my pregnancy. Another thing, the clinic I went to, which was Walter Reed in Bethesda. I know a lot of you always want to know where I went. I went to Walter Reed National Hospital in Bethesda. It is a military facility, so if you don't have any military affiliation, be it you're in the military or your spouse is in the military, those are the only way that you can really get care there, is through a military connection. But at the particular reproductive endocrinology clinic I went to, they believed that checking in with their patients more often via weekly appointments actually reduce patient stress in order to help them hold and carry their pregnancies much longer. My doctor did tell me that the evidence was very anecdotal, but as they were seeing patients come in, they saw much better outcomes when patients were seen more frequently. It just gave patients a peace of mind. I know it definitely gave me a peace of mind, and it really didn't take much for the doctors to see patients on a weekly basis. Like I said, there's not yet any science to back it. I don't think there's many studies being done to back it, but from the words of my reproductive endocrinologist's mouth, for women going through recurrent miscarriage, and especially unexplained recurrent miscarriage, having weekly ultrasounds or visits were actually pretty crucial and pretty helpful in them achieving their take-home baby. It was not something I had to push for. It was something that they were already implementing as part of their own protocol and part of their own practices. They did tell me that when I wanted to, I could go longer in between visits. If I wanted to go from coming every week to every 2 weeks to every 3 weeks, whatever the frequency was, they were like, no problem. We'll see you whenever you want to be seen, as long as it's a week in between. And other than that, I got plenty of rest. I was sick as a dog for, like I said, the first 5 months of pregnancy, so I didn't really have a whole lot of choice because I didn't have a lot of energy. I wasn't able to keep food down, so I was pretty much drinking protein shakes whenever I could stomach them. But that was pretty much what I lived off of for the first 5 months, and maybe a meal or two here and there, some saltine crackers, some broth, and that was pretty much it. So I didn't have a whole lot of energy to do a bunch of anything anyway. But I do believe that resting a lot in throughout that first trimester and into the second trimester was definitely very helpful in keeping me in a very calm state as far as my body was concerned. Of course, mentally, you have all the anxieties and everything that come with it, but to some extent, it's kind of hard to be anxious when you're asleep most of the time. And then during times I was awake, I just kept myself pretty much busy, not physically busy, but just mentally busy. So yeah, guys, that is exactly what I did differently to both get and stay pregnant with Rainbow Baby number 1. I really hope this video was helpful. I really hope you found it insightful and can possibly implement some of these same tools, supplements, practices into your own regimens. Of course, course with the help of your doctor. Supplements tend to be pretty safe, but you just have to be careful about what medications you might be taking with them, which is why I said always talk to your doctor, because I would hate for anyone to have any negative reactions. But overall, I hope this helps you out. I hope it potentially gives you some ideas, and if anything, I hope it gives you some questions that you may be able to ask your own care team so that they can assist you in achieving a healthy pregnancy and your take-home baby. As always, I am sending you positive vibes. I know this might be a difficult season in your life, but I am wishing you all the best. I am sending all of my hope and all of my prayers out to you. I hope you all are having a wonderful and amazing week, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.